Betty, I don't care what my mother said. I love you. I want to marry you and spend the rest of my life with you.
Curvy black women don't belong in Seoul. That was the first sentence Hae-won Choi ever spoke to the woman her son was about to marry. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. She had walked into her own marble foyer to find her only son kneeling on the floor, a ring in his hand. A ring that had not been worn by a woman in 3 generations of the Choi family. And in front of him, the woman whose finger that ring was meant for. Betty Bonsu. Ghanaian British. Plus size. Braids past her waist. A thin scar across the back of her left wrist that her father had stitched himself when she was 9 years old. A small bronze pendant at her throat in the shape of a bird looking backwards. Betty had not yet said yes. She had not yet said anything. She was still trying to understand that Tae-hoon Choi, the youngest and most feared head of the Choi family, the man Seoul whispered about and lowered its eyes around, was on one knee in front of her, asking. And then the elevator opened. His mother stepped out. She looked at her son. She looked at the woman her son was kneeling for. And she said it. Curvy black women don't belong in Seoul. Tae-hoon did not look at his mother. He looked at Betty. And what happened in his face in that single half second, in front of the most dangerous woman in Seoul and the only woman he had ever loved, is the entire reason this story exists. If you are new here, welcome home. This is Afro-Korean Love Stories Vault. This is exactly the kind of story you have been looking for. The kind where love finds its way through the rooms it should not have survived. Take a quiet moment, before we go any further, to subscribe. So no story we tell here ever passes you by. And then stay with me, because this one is going to stay with you long after it ends. To understand the silence in that foyer, we have to go back. 6 months earlier. To the morning Betty Bonsu landed at Incheon Airport with 2 suitcases, 1 envelope, and a name written in her late father's handwriting on the outside of that envelope. The name of a property in Seoul her father had bought 11 years before he died. A property he had spent half his life designing in his head and never seen with his own eyes. A boutique. Just a small one. On a quiet street in the Hanam neighborhood. 2 stories. A workshop in the back. A window on the front street wide enough to hang a single ceremonial cloth from ceiling to floor. He had told her about it the year before he died. He had told her she was the only person in the world who could finish it. She had buried him 3 months later. She had carried that envelope for 10 years. And now, on a quiet Tuesday in March, with rain falling so softly it sounded more like a memory than weather, Betty Bonsu was finally standing in the city her father had loved more than any other. She did not know yet that the man who would change her life was already, at that exact moment, 3 kilometers away, finishing a phone call that ended someone else's. His name was Tae-hoon Choi. He was 36 years old. He was the youngest head the Choi family had had in 4 generations, and the most feared. There were men in Seoul who had built their careers on never crossing him, and men in Seoul who had built their careers on pretending they were not afraid of him, and not one man in Seoul who had built anything by being right about that the second time. He was standing at the window of a private office on the 42nd floor of a building that did not appear on any city map under his name. His suit was charcoal. His shirt was white. His hands were unnaturally still. On the desk behind him, a glass of water sweated quietly in a square of sunlight. A meeting was in progress. 6 men sat around the table. His lieutenant, Yoon Seo, sat at his right hand, a battered dark leather notebook open in front of him, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. The phone on the desk rang once. Tae-hoon did not turn around. He answered without looking. He listened for 3 seconds. He said 3 words. Do it now. He hung up. He returned to the window. The meeting continued as if a chair had simply been moved. Across the city, on a tree-lined street where the magnolias were starting to open, a man named Jin Ho Ryu took the last breath of his life in the back of a parked car. He had been skimming Choi family revenue for 6 months. He had believed he was clever about it. He had been wrong about the 3rd week. He had not been told he was wrong because Tae-hoon Choi did not, as a matter of policy, tell men they were wrong. He simply allowed the wrong men to keep walking around for as long as he needed them to. The meeting in the office continued. The glass of water sweated. Yoon Seo wrote 1 line in his notebook, the date and a single tick mark, and closed the notebook. No one in the room asked who had called. This was a normal Tuesday for Tae-hoon Choi. Across town, Betty Bonsu was being refused service at a 3rd boutique. She had been in Seoul for 91 days. She had been the only black woman in every room she entered for 91 days. She had walked into 3 boutiques and been politely shown the door. She had walked into 1 restaurant and been told the kitchen was closed, while 3 plates of pasta were being delivered to the table behind her. She had been photographed without her permission by strangers in the subway, in the elevator of her own apartment building, on the steps of the cultural ministry where she was trying to push her permits through. The photographs had appeared online. They had been captioned. She had not read the captions. She did not need to. She did not cry. She had not cried since the funeral. Her brother Kwame had called her 3 times a week from Kumasi. He had asked her every single time when she was coming home. She had told him every single time that she was not coming home until the boutique opened. She had told him every single time that she could feel their father in the building, in the dust, in the empty workshop, in the wide window that did not yet have a cloth in it. She had not told him that someone, somewhere, was quietly blocking her permits. She did not yet know who. It was Hae Won Choi. It had been Hae Won Choi for 91 days. From the moment Hae Won received the call from her family lawyer informing her that a Bonsu woman had landed in Seoul with a notarized deed in her hand, she had been at war with Betty. She had made 3 phone calls. She had not raised her voice on any of them. She had simply named a name and ended a sentence. Permits had stalled. Inspectors had become unavailable. A contractor had withdrawn a bid. A bank had paused a transfer. Betty did not know any of this. The man who was going to know all of it, the man who was going to find every single thread and pull it apart with his own hands, was at that moment 3 kilometers away, watching the rain fall on a magnolia tree, and not yet aware that the most important thing in his life was on her way to be refused entry to a tea house on a street he happened to be walking down that afternoon. It was raining when she got there. Not heavily. The kind of soft rain that lands on braids and slides through them rather than soaking them. The kind of rain her father used to call a soul mercy. She did not remember he had ever said that until she was standing on the doorstep of the tea house with her hand on the handle. Then she remembered. The shape of him in their kitchen in Croydon. The way he had laughed and said that word. Mercy. She pushed the door open. The woman behind the counter looked up. Her face did something Betty had seen 91 days of in the city. Tightened. Composed itself. The woman walked over to the door, smiled with a half-second delay, and said in careful English that they were closed. Behind Betty, a Korean couple walked in. The woman behind the counter did not look at them. She kept her eyes on Betty's face. The Korean couple ordered. Betty stood in the doorway with the soft rain on her braids and her hands still on the door handle, and she did not move, because she had not yet decided whether to apologize for existing in the space or simply turn around. A man stepped past her. He did not look at the woman behind the counter. He did not raise his voice. He simply reached over Betty's shoulder, put his hand on the door, and held it open for her. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit. His shirt was white. His hands were unnaturally still. The woman behind the counter saw him. She went very, very pale. She did not say anything else about closing. Betty looked up at the man whose arm was still extended over her shoulder, still holding the door, and saw, for the first time in her life, a face that did not move at all. There was no expression on it. Nothing. It was simply a face that had decided to be present, in this doorway, until the situation it was looking at had finished correcting itself. He did not look at her either. He spoke 1 quiet sentence to the woman behind the counter. Betty did not catch all of it. She caught 2 words, the Korean for please serve, and the Korean for my friend, his friend. He had never seen her before in his life. The woman behind the counter bowed, deeper than she needed to. She walked Betty to a table by the window. She brought her tea without being asked. She brought it in the best cup in the house. She brought it twice as fast as anyone else in the room was being served. When Betty looked up, the man in the charcoal suit was already gone. She had not thanked him. He had not waited to be thanked. That night, in a glass-walled office on the 42nd floor, Tae-hoon Choi sat across a table from a man named Soo Min Kong. Soo Min Kong had been the chief accountant for the Choi family for 11 years. He had built 3 houses. He had sent 2 children to university in Boston. He had bought his wife a car the previous spring that she had not asked for. The cost of those things did not appear in his salary. Tae-hoon let him explain. He did not interrupt. He allowed Soo Min to lay out the documents. He allowed Soo Min to walk him through the math. He allowed Soo Min to believe, for 46 minutes, that the explanation was working. At the 47th minute, Tae-hoon set down his glass of water. He asked one question. Where did the boat go? Soo-min went pale. He had not mentioned a boat. Tae-hoon did not say anything else. He folded his hands on the table. He waited. Yoon-seo, sitting at his right hand, opened the battered leather notebook to a page near the back. He turned the notebook around. He slid it across the table. Soo-min looked at the page. The page had his name on it. The page had a date on it. The page had a number on it. The page had the name of a man who was not currently breathing. Soo-min did not stand up from the table. The meeting ended quietly. Tae-hoon walked out into the corridor. He stopped at the window. He looked down at the city. The magnolias were starting to bloom even at night, even under the streetlights. He thought, without permission from any part of himself, about a woman in the doorway of a tea house with rain on her braids and a hand still on the door. He thought about how she had not thanked him. He thought about how she had not needed to. He did not say her name. He did not yet know her name, but he would know it by morning. Yoon was already finding it. By the end of the week, Betty knew his name. The woman who ran the tea house had pressed a small folded paper into her hand on her second visit, with a careful deferential look on her face. The paper had a name on it. Tae-hoon Tsoi. Underneath the name, in neat Korean characters that Betty had to translate slowly with her phone, was a single phrase. He asked me to give this to you if you came back. There was no number, no address, no message, just his name. Betty held that paper in her lap on the subway home and felt, for the first time in 92 days, that someone in this city had seen her on purpose. She did not yet know that the man whose name was on that paper had spent 2 days quietly dismantling whatever had been blocking her permits. Yoon-seo had found, by Wednesday morning, the source of the obstruction. He had brought the file to Tae-hoon. He had set it on the desk. He had said nothing. Tae-hoon had read it. Tae-hoon had read it twice. And then, for the first time in any meeting Yoon could remember, Tae-hoon had looked up at him and his face had moved. A muscle in his jaw. A single muscle. Tae-hoon had said very quietly 2 words. My mother. Yoon had nodded. Tae-hoon had said nothing else. He had simply taken out his phone. He had made 3 calls. He had not raised his voice on any of them. By Thursday morning, every permit Betty had been waiting 91 days for had cleared. By Friday morning, the contractor had come back with a new bid. By Saturday morning, the bank transfer had moved. By Sunday morning, the inspectors who had been unavailable to her were available to her on a single day of notice. None of them knew why. None of them asked. Hae-won Choi did not yet know that her son had moved against her. Tae-hoon had not told her. This was the first secret he had ever kept from his mother in his life. He kept it because he did not yet have language for why he was keeping it. He kept it because he did not yet understand what he was doing. He kept it because somewhere inside him, a part he did not know existed, had decided something on a doorstep in the rain that the rest of him had not yet caught up to. Betty did not know any of this. She only knew that on Monday morning her permits cleared. That on Tuesday morning the workshop floor was finally laid. That on Wednesday morning the wide front window was installed. And that for the first time in 3 months she stood in her father's building with her father's name on the door and cried. Once. For about 4 seconds. Then she stopped. She kept the folded paper with his name on it in the inside pocket of her jacket. She did not look for him. She did not know yet that he had not stopped looking for her. He came to the boutique on a Thursday night. He had not planned to. He had been in a meeting on the next block. The meeting had finished early. He had walked out into the cold spring air and turned, without thinking about it, in the direction of her street. He had told himself he was checking the inspection report. He had told himself he was confirming the permits. He had told himself a number of things that all sounded reasonable until he was standing on the pavement opposite her front window at 11 minutes past 3 in the morning, watching her sand a doorframe by herself. She was in an oversized cream sweater. Her braids were loose. She had her father's old tape measure in her back pocket. The bronze pendant at her throat caught the workshop light every time she leaned forward. She was humming something. He could not hear it from across the street. He could see her shoulders moving with it. He crossed the street. She did not hear the door open. He did not say anything. He walked up behind her. He stood quietly for a moment, 3 feet away, watching her hand move on the sandpaper. He could see the corner she was struggling with. The angle was wrong for her grip. She was about to take the skin off her thumb. He reached over her shoulder. He took the sandpaper out of her hand. His knuckles brushed the back of her wrist. Where the scar was. She did not move. He finished the corner. She turned around very slowly. He was already setting the sandpaper down on the workbench. His hands were unnaturally still again. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the corner he had finished. She said his name. He had never heard his name in her voice before. A muscle in his jaw moved. She said it again. Taehon. He looked at her. The whole room went very, very quiet. The workshop light was the only thing humming. He did not move toward her. She did not move toward him. They stood 3 feet apart in a building neither of them yet understood. On a street neither of them yet understood. In a city neither of them yet understood. And the only thing happening between them was the fact that he had finished the corner of a doorframe with her father's tape measure in her back pocket. And she had not thanked him. She did not need to. He did not wait to be thanked. He nodded once. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the handle. He did not turn around. He said one sentence very softly, in English. Do not work this late by yourself. He let himself out. She stood in the workshop with the sandpaper in her hand and a feeling in her chest she had not had in 10 years, and she did not move for a very long time. The next morning, Seo walked into Tae-hoon's private office with the leather notebook closed in his hand and a look on his face that Tae-hoon had not seen since the night Tae-hoon's father died. Tae-hoon did not sit down. He set the notebook on the desk. He said, I have something I think you need to see. Tae-hoon looked at him. Tae-hoon opened the notebook to a page at the back. It was not his own notebook. The handwriting was older. The paper had yellowed at the edges. The ink was the kind of dark blue ink Tae-hoon's father used to use. The page was a list of properties. Halfway down the list, in handwriting Tae-hoon had not seen in 20 years, was the address of a small boutique in the Hanam neighborhood. 2 stories. A workshop in the back. The deed had been held in trust since 1986. The trust had 2 names on it. One Sik Choi, and Kojo Bonsu. Tae-hoon did not breathe for a long moment. Tae-hoon turned the page. A second list. Letters. Dates. 40 years of correspondence between his father and a man in Kumasi whose daughter had walked into a tea house in the rain 3 weeks ago. Tae-hoon read 3 of the letters. He did not need to read more. His father had laughed in those letters in a way Tae-hoon had not known his father knew how to laugh. His father had written one sentence about Tae-hoon when Tae-hoon was 9 years old. The boy is too serious. I am afraid I have made him so. Tae-hoon set the notebook down very carefully. He looked out the window. In a single silent minute, every earlier scene reframed itself. The doorstep in the rain. The corner of the doorframe. The way she had said his name. The way he had not been able to walk past her tea house without turning down her street. He remembered something Tae-hoon had said in the file about the man on the Magnolia Street. That man had not only been skimming Choi family revenue. He had also, in the last 3 months of his life, been quietly building a case against a Ghanaian British woman whose permits he wanted to sell. He had been threatening her permits. He had been threatening her. Tae-hoon had not known her name when he made the call. He had only known that a man was moving on someone he had no business moving on. He had ended him. He had been protecting her before he knew she was his. If you are feeling what this story is doing to you right now, take a moment. Pause. Tap subscribe if you have not already, so that no Afro-Korean love story we tell here ever passes you by. And share this with someone in your life who lives for stories where love finds its way through the impossible. A sister, a best friend, partner. Send it to the person who would feel this with you. Then come back, because we are only halfway home, and what happens next is the reason this video exists. That afternoon, Tae-hoon transferred the deed of the Hanam property out of the Choi family trust and into Betty Bonsu's name. He did it quietly. He did not tell her. He filed it through his own lawyer. He paid every transfer fee himself. He left no paper trail back to his name. When the notification arrived at Betty's apartment 2 days later, the letter said only that an old administrative error had been corrected, and that the property she had been renovating was now legally hers, free and clear. She read the letter twice. She did not understand. She called her lawyer in London. Her lawyer also did not understand. She called the lawyer named in the letter. The lawyer in Seoul was polite and gave her nothing. She put the letter in a drawer. She told no one. She had not seen Tae-hoon since the night of the doorframe. She did not know he had not slept since. He had told no one what he had done. Not even Do-yoon. Especially not his mother. Hae-won found out anyway. She had her own people inside the family trust. By Friday morning she knew. By Friday afternoon she had read the original 1986 deed, with both her husband's signature and Kojo Bonsu's signature on it. By Friday evening she had stopped being able to pour her own tea without her hands shaking. By Saturday morning she had decided what she was going to do. She invited Betty for tea. The invitation was handwritten. Pearl-colored paper. Old money calligraphy. The driver who delivered it bowed to Betty in a way no one in Seoul had bowed to her in 95 days. Betty stood at her kitchen counter holding the envelope and felt something she had not felt since her father's funeral. She felt seen on purpose by someone powerful. She did not yet know it was a trap. She put on her best dress. The midnight blue silk with the Kent trim. She put on her mother's gold bangles. She let her braids down. She took the bronze pendant out from under her collar and set it on the outside of the silk, where it could be seen. She did this because she had been raised by a Kojua Bonsu, who had taught her that when a powerful woman invites you for tea, you arrive looking like the daughter of someone who loved you. The tea was perfect. The conversation was warm. Hae-won asked careful questions about Kumasi, about Betty's mother, about the boutique. She said she had always admired the Kent patterns. She said she had once owned a hanbok with West African embroidery on the cuffs. She did not say where she had bought it. Betty did not ask. For 1 full hour, Betty believed, for the first time in 3 months, that Seoul might one day learn how to hold her. Then Hae-won set down her cup. She took out a slim leather folder. She placed it on the table between them. She did not open it. She slid it gently across the polished wood until it was directly in front of Betty's hand. She told Betty, in the same warm, careful tone she had used for the tea, that the folder contained enough documentation to send her son to prison for the rest of his life. She told Betty that she had compiled it over 20 years. She told Betty that she would never use it, unless a certain Ghanaian British woman did not get on a plane out of Incheon by sunrise on Tuesday. Betty did not open the folder. She did not need to. She looked at Hae-won. She looked at the perfectly poured tea. She looked at the pale jade ring on Hae-won's finger. She thought, for 1 whole second, about throwing the tea in this woman's face. She thought about it the way her mother would have thought about it. With dignity, with clarity, with absolute certainty that she had earned the right to. She did not throw the tea. She stood up. She thanked Hae-won for her hospitality. In careful Korean she had practiced for 10 years. She walked out of the apartment. She walked down the marble corridor. She got in the elevator. She kept her back straight until the elevator door closed. Then her knees nearly gave out. She did not call Afia. She did not call her mother. She did not call her brother. She booked a flight. She packed 1 suitcase. She left the second one in the apartment. She did not tell Taehoon. She did not tell anyone. She wrote 1 letter in her own handwriting in English on the back of the architectural drawings her father had made of the boutique. She left it in the empty workshop. The letter said only 7 words. I am sorry. I have to go. She did not sign it. She did not need to. Taehoon arrived at the boutique at 4 in the morning. He had been woken at 3:40 by a phone call from his lawyer, who had been woken at 3:30 by a phone call from the bank, which had flagged an emergency international transfer in Betty's name. Taehoon read the transfer note. He read the destination. He stood very still for 1 full second. Then he moved. He walked into the empty workshop. He saw the letter on the workbench. He read it. He read it again. He put it in the inside pocket of his jacket. He took out his phone. He called Do-yoon. He said 1 sentence. She is at the airport. Find her. Do-yoon was already moving. What neither of them yet knew was that Byung-ho Hwang had been waiting for this moment for 4 months. Byung-ho had men inside the airport. Byung-ho had men inside the airline. Byung-ho had been watching Taehoon for a long time, and the only thing Byung-ho had not yet found was a single specific weakness he could put his hand on. The night Hae-won Choi handed Betty Bonsu a leather folder in a marble apartment. One of the housekeepers in that apartment was on Byung-ho's payroll. By the time Betty's car pulled up at Incheon, Byung-ho was already inside the private terminal. He took her in the corridor between security and the gate. He was very polite about it. He smiled with a mouth that did not move his eyes. He said in careful English that there was a gentleman who would very much like to speak with her before her flight. He took her elbow. He walked her into a private room. He closed the door. Tae-hoon's car came over the bridge at 140 kilometers an hour. What happened in the next 4 hours has been told different ways by different people, and most of those people are no longer in Seoul to tell it again. Byung-ho Hwang had built his organization over 20 years. He had 3 lieutenants, 6 soldiers, and a private compound on the south side of the river. By sunrise, the compound was empty. By sunrise, the 3 lieutenants were no longer breathing. By sunrise, 5 of the 6 soldiers had also stopped breathing. The 6th soldier was alive. He was alive on purpose. He had been left, deliberately, with a single message to deliver to whoever was left of Byung-ho's people in this city. The message was 4 words. She is not yours. The soldier delivered the message. He delivered it correctly. He left Seoul on the next flight out and was never seen again. Byung-ho himself did not see the sunrise. Tae-hoon walked into the private terminal at 6:43 in the morning. He was still in last night's suit. His shirt was still white. His hands were still unnaturally still. There was a thin line of blood on his left cuff that he had not yet noticed. He found the room they had taken Betty to. He found her sitting in a chair. She was unhurt. She was very still. She looked at him. He knelt down on the floor of that terminal. Not on one knee, on both. He told her for the first time about their fathers. He told her about the trust, about the deed, about the letters, about the way Won Sik Choi had written about Kojo Bonsu when he thought no one was reading. He told her that he had been protecting her before he knew her name. He told her that he had transferred the deed because the building was hers, and only hers, and it had always been hers, and his family had been holding it for hers for 40 years. He told her about his mother's folder. He told her that he had already destroyed every copy. He told her that there was nothing she could be threatened with anymore. Then he asked her, in English, in the empty corridor of a private terminal in a city that had spent 95 days refusing to look at her, if she would please come home. She said one word, yes. She did not get on the plane. He took her home. He took her to the apartment that had been his father's, the one with the marble foyer and the view of the magnolias on the boulevard. He took her there because there was one more thing in that apartment that belonged to her, and she did not yet know it. He sat her on the long sofa in the living room. He went into his father's old study. He opened a drawer that had been closed since 2016. He took out a small velvet box. He took out the leather notebook Diyun had shown him. He came back into the living room. He sat down across from her. He held the velvet box in his hand. He told her that he did not know how to do this the way other men did this. He told her that he had never been on one knee for anyone in his life. He told her that the ring in the box had belonged to his grandmother, and his great-grandmother, and a woman before that whose name he no longer knew. He told her that no woman had worn the ring in 3 generations because the women the Choi men had married since had not been the kind of women anyone in the family had wanted to give a grandmother's ring to. He told her that this was the first time, in 120 years, that a Choi man had picked the right person. He stood up. He walked around the low table. He knelt in front of her. He opened the box. And the elevator opened. His mother walked out. His mother looked at her son. She looked at the woman her son was kneeling for. And she said it, without raising her voice. Curvy black women don't belong in Seoul. Tae-hoon did not look at his mother. He looked at Betty. He stood up, very slowly. He picked up the leather notebook from the side table where he had set it. He walked across the foyer. He placed the notebook into his mother's hands. He said, in Korean, in the gentlest voice he had ever used with her in his adult life, please open it. Hae-won opened the notebook. She read the first page. Her husband's handwriting. The way her husband had written when he thought she was not reading. The way he had written about another man. About a friendship. About a quiet laughter on a quiet Tuesday in a tea house she had never been invited to. She turned the page. She read the next. She turned the page. She read the next. She read for 2 minutes. She read in a silence so complete the clock on the wall could be heard ticking through the whole foyer. She found, near the back of the notebook, a folded sheet of paper. She opened it. It was the original 1986 deed. Her husband's signature. The address of a small boutique in the Hanam neighborhood her husband had been buying with a Ghanaian man she had spent 40 years hating for the wrong reason. Her hands began to shake. She looked up at her son. She looked at Betty. She tried to speak. She could not. Tae-hoon walked back across the foyer. He knelt down in front of Betty again. He opened the box again. He asked her, in English, in the room where his mother could not unhear it. The only question he had ever wanted to ask anyone in his life. Betty looked at him. She looked at the ring. She looked at the woman standing behind him with 40 years of certainty collapsing in her hands. She said yes. She had already said it once tonight, in a private terminal at sunrise, but she said it again. So everyone in the room would hear it. So everyone in the room would have to. Hae-won Choi sat down very slowly on the bench by the elevator. She did not say another word. She did not need to. 6 months later, the small boutique on the quiet street in the Hanam neighborhood opened its doors. The wide front window finally had a cloth in it. The cloth had been woven in Kumasi by Mama Akojua Bonsu over 6 months. It carried, woven into the Kent in deep indigo thread, 2 columns of Korean ink characters. Tae-hoon had given Mama Akojua the characters in person, 3 months earlier, on a trip to Ghana he had taken alone. The characters were a single sentence Won-sik Choi had once written to Kojo Bonsu about the daughter he had not yet had. The cloth hung from ceiling to floor. The opening was attended by both families. Hae-won Choi stood in front of the cloth for a long time. She bowed to it once. She did not explain herself. She did not need to. 9 months after that, Tae-hoon Choi and Betty Bonsu were married in a courtyard in Kumasi, under a canopy made of indigo silk and white hanbok cotton, in a ceremony that combined the libation prayer of her father's people with the bowing rites of his mother's. Hae-won Choi bowed first. She bowed to Mama Akojua Bonsu. Mama Akojua bowed back. 2 grandmothers, in 2 languages, agreed on something neither of them was going to translate. Afia Sarpong cried the entire ceremony in 3 different bright colors. A year after the wedding, Tae-hoon completed the construction of a house in the village his wife's father had been born in. He built it for Mama Akojua. He built a weaving workshop next to it for her cooperative. He flew her in to see it on a Sunday morning. She walked through the rooms. She put her hand on the wall of the workshop. She did not breathe for a long time. Then she sat down on the floor in the middle of the workshop and cried the kind of crying women do when their dead husbands have finally been believed. A year after that, Betty handed her husband the leather notebook on a Tuesday morning, with a new entry written in her own handwriting on the first empty page. The entry was 3 words long. She is coming. He read it twice. The most dangerous man in Seoul, who had never let his face move in a room full of people who needed to be afraid of him, sat down on the kitchen floor of their apartment and put his head in his hands and cried, because his daughter was coming, and he had been told by a notebook that had once belonged to his father. On a Sunday morning, 5 years into the marriage, in a kitchen in Seoul, in a house full of 2 languages and the smell of jollof rice and Korean seaweed soup, a small girl with her mother's braids and her father's still hands stood in front of her grandmother. Her grandmother, Hae-won Choi, knelt down on the kitchen floor in front of her. Her grandmother showed her, very slowly, how to bow. The girl bowed. She got the angle wrong. Her grandmother fixed her hands. The girl bowed again. Her grandmother smiled. It was the first time in 43 years that Hae-won Choi had smiled before the half-second was up. Across the kitchen, Tae-hoon Choi watched his mother teach his daughter how to bow. He watched his wife watch his mother teach his daughter how to bow. He felt, for the first time in his life, the thing his father had been writing about in a notebook in 1986 in a tea house in the Hanam neighborhood that nobody else could find. He had been right about her. He had been right about her from the doorstep in the rain. He had been right about her since he was 9 years old, and his father had written, in dark blue ink in a leather notebook, that the boy was too serious. He had been right about her the way Won-sik Choi had been right about Kojo Bonsu. The way Akojua Bonsu had been right about Kojo. The way the universe had been right about all 4 of them, 40 years before any of them had known each other's names. He looked at his wife across the kitchen. She was already looking at him. She did not say anything. She did not need to. If the story moved you, the comment section is where it gets to live. Tell me what you felt. Tell me who you thought of. Tell me which moment between Tae-hoon and Betty stayed with you the longest. Was it the doorframe at 3 in the morning? Was it the airport at sunrise? Was it the bow on the kitchen floor? Whatever it was, leave it down below. Someone else needs to read it tonight. And remember this, the real kind of love, the kind that finds its way through 40 years of silence, through a foyer full of marble, through a room full of people who said it could not be done. That kind of love is always worth the wait. This is Afro-Korean Love Stories Vault. I will see you in the next one.